So welcome to session 5F. I'm delighted to have you here with us for this session. It's under the heading of the theme of sustainability and built environments. I'm Lloyd Scott, and I'm here to chair the session, and we will run from now 11:30 until 12:30. And we have 3 papers, and the first of those papers is the paper by Aysar, Dawod, Selman, Svanborg, Guðjónsdóttir, and Anna N. Gade, entitled, "Is the Danish construction sector ready for sustainable and circular construction sites?" So I'm just going to play the presentation.
Selman from University College Northern Denmark, and I'm glad to present you this research about investigating the Danish construction sector readiness to implement sustainable and circular construction sites. Today we are facing serious challenges in relation to the environmental and climatic changes, which requests for an urgent action. In Europe and Denmark, the construction sector accounts for approximately 40% of the total energy consumption, 40% of the total CO2 emissions, and about 35% of the total waste. Using sustainable solutions in construction sites will help to reduce the CO2 emissions, resources, and energy consumption. The Danish governmental climate action has set ambitious goals to reduce the total CO2 emissions to 70% in 2030 compared to 1990 and to be climate neutral by 2050. The Danish building regulations have set a new voluntary sustainability building class that will be in use in 2 years. The main aim is to support sustainability in the Danish building sector. This new building class includes many requirements. One of these requirements focuses on sustainable construction sites and promoting circularity. The study aims to investigate the Danish building sector's readiness to use the new building regulations requirements for sustainable construction sites in terms of circularity, focusing on reducing resources and waste and optimizing reuse and recycling. It investigates actors' understanding and current level of implementing sustainability principles in construction sites, and highlights the perceived challenges and actors' practical experiences. So it seeks to answer the research question, is the Danish construction sector ready for sustainable and construction sites? A mixed method approach was applied, including a quantitative and qualitative online survey, targeting contractors, engineers, architects, and professional building owners. The data was collected from 146 respondents with a response rate of 17%. The data analysis and survey design were based on readiness for change theory by Holt and the 3 sense-making domains of technology by Orlikovsky and Gash. The results analysis is divided into 4 areas. First, implementing sustainability in the Danish building regulations, focusing on sustainable construction sites and circular economy. Investigating the existing experiences in sustainable construction sites, and investigating organizations' motivation to establish sustainable construction sites, and defining the perceived challenges. Actors were asked to evaluate to what extent their organizations are ready for the next sustainability building class, in order to investigate their readiness and what the current status of implementing sustainability in construction sites. It is revealed from results that 10% of the respondents evaluate themselves as very well prepared for the new building regulations sustainability requirements, while 20% are well prepared and 45% to some extent. Actors were asked whether they had projects with sustainable construction site principles, and results relieve that 31% of the actors have been involved in sustainable construction sites. 63% have not, but are interested in this, and 6% have not, but are not interested at all. Actors were also asked to evaluate their experiences in sustainable construction site principles according to 8 principles, including resource reduction, waste management, handling of hazardous substances from building materials, waste sorting, cleaning building materials, location and logistics of construction site, and energy consumption and vibration and noise. The results relieve that the biggest experiences are related mostly to waste sorting and handling the dangerous substances from building materials, but they lack experience in managing vibration from construction sites, energy reduction, cleaning and preparing building materials for second life use. Organizations' motivation to work with sustainable construction sites was investigated. Here, actors' motivation is linked to the benefits gained. It's found that 59% of respondents strongly confirmed the environmental benefits, but 37% of the responses only conferred the economic benefits by reducing resources, recycling, and reuse of building materials. 39% of responses were not sure of the added benefits. Other motives are related to the social responsibility and eagerness to promote sustainability. Sustainable construction sites supports organizations' vision in sustainable development, obtaining a greener profile. It also assists them improving their position in the competitive building sector, which requires extensive efforts. To investigate organizations' readiness and potential to apply sustainable construction site principles, actors were asked whether they had experienced any challenges or not. Results show that 69% have experienced barriers, while 27% have not. This figure also shows the presence of some challenges, mainly economical issues, with very little financial gains and expensive solutions. It's also difficult to handle construction waste and hazardous substances. Other challenges include poor communication between actors and lack of know-how. Unclear rules, uncertain benefits are also considered to be challenging. In addition, this topic is also perceived as a great risk. Other detected challenges is that sustainable construction sites require bigger resources compared to traditional sites in terms of cost, time, and competences. Poor communication between actors is also detected, which is a significant barrier. It's also difficult to provide measurements and documentation for the energy consumption at construction sites, hazardous substances, and waste quantities. We also lack of experience and know-how, and especially in handling construction waste and hazardous substances. As expressed by several respondents, organizations only make a change when great incentives are gained and when it's a governmental requirement. Although some existing barriers can influence how fast and prepared the building sector is, barriers such as economy and effective communication between actors should be considered when planning new projects, as both factors are essential to fulfill environmental, economical, and social sustainability. Law enforcement and financial incentives are considered to be critical drivers for proper waste management. Here, economy is a risk factor, and it's not evident whether profits can be gained or extra expenses will be added. Actors must also focus on improving their knowledge and collaborate with experienced professionals. Results show a willingness to gain knowledge, indicating the positive mindset to make a change, but actors are still not quite ready to implement sustainable construction site strategies, but are progressing towards the proper direction with great interest and a request to learn more. Thank you for your attention, and I'm ready for your questions. So, are there any questions?
I don't know if Lloyd is muted just now.
Apologies, I am muted. I'm talking. Thanks, Daniel. I'm talking away to myself. So thank you, Aysar, for your presentation, and I suppose your work resonates with a lot of the discussions and papers that have been presented in ARCOM 2021. And as I mentioned in the opening plenary, I think we have 24 papers on sustainability. But I suppose it demonstrates that Denmark is looking at the whole area of the sustainability and looking at the circular economy aspect of it in terms of construction sites. And I suppose what I've taken from your paper is that, you know, Denmark is like many other countries in terms of the implementation of that circular aspect of sustainability. I suppose I have one question in terms of, did your research, you mentioned it as one of the outcomes, social responsibility and eagerness to promote sustainable and circular construction sites was a response from some of the respondents. And I'm just wondering, did you get any insight into how that might actually be addressed?
Yes, that's true. It was detected from when the respondents' comments were collected. It was seen that many of them, they are involved in, for example, Danish building certification assessment, and they already have a green profile. So these organizations, they still want to keep their position in the competent market, and they want to they have eagerness and willingness to use circular strategies. So they already use it, and they want to improve their situation. So yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I noticed Tom Coonan has a question in the chat. I've actually opened it up for you to ask the question, Tom, if you'd like to ask the question.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you for your interesting work. What was not completely clear to me is it just really aimed at only the construction site, so during the construction phase, or do your results also apply to, for example, how the asset is designed or which circular principles are used beforehand?
It's actually only focusing on the construction sites, because it will be a requirement when the new building regulations will be in use in 2 years. So one of the requirements is to document for example, the energy consumption, also circular solutions at this phase. So it doesn't include the operation phase or the use of the building.
Okay, thanks. Clear. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Daniel, would you like to pose your question there?
Yeah, hi. You identified a number of challenges during the research. One of the questions I had was, how did you identify these challenges for the group to agree and disagree on? And then the second part of the question was, what do you think, what more information do they need to make that leap to start getting engaged in some of these initiatives?
Yes, so the first question, thank you for your question. The first one, as I understood, how did I find the barriers? How they were defined? Yes, I used the technological frameworks by Olikoski and Gash to define the barriers according to the nature of technology, which is circular strategies here. in construction sites, and also the nature, the strategy of the technology and the technology in use.
Yeah.
And when talking about the nature of technology, so here how the different organizations understand the nature of it and what are the benefits gained. And when we look into the nature of the strategy of technology, then here what are the strategies taken by organizations, what kind of principles and strategies they use. And when we look into the technology in use, so here what kind of tools and what kind of systems they use in order to promote these strategies.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you had another question?
Yes, it was just about, you'd mentioned, say, for example, that they were worried about the financial uncertainty.
Yes.
And I was just wondering, what information do the people who have these worries need to make the leap into getting engaged in some of these?
Yes, well, it has to be clearly defined and documented, the economical incentives, because actors are still not sure whether there will be some added benefits, economical benefits, or it will lead to extra expenses. So if this is documented and maybe with life cycle cost analysis and documenting the benefits of these circular strategies, then that might help actors to take decisions in that direction. So yes, that might help to solve the barriers according to economy and also risk factors.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. Have we any more questions from the participants? Pernilla, did I see you actually writing in the chat? Did you want to ask a question?
Can you hear me?
We can, yep.
Okay, I'm not sure if I had a question. Well, I made a similar survey, although it was broader, on sustainability in the Swedish construction industry 50 years ago, and I can see that a lot of the problems remains, or maybe there are new problems. My question was more of a comment that is there no progress, or is it so that it's a constant that this will be issues that is always raised? Communication will always be imperfect, and there will always be lacking information. But some organizations still make progress while others don't. So it's more of a comment than maybe a question. But maybe we shouldn't be so focused on the lack, because and dig more into what is it, the lack? Why do they express that they lack all this information? We know there's more information available today than 15 years ago, but still the problems are raised similar.
Okay.
Yes.
Really good comment, Pernilla. Aysar, would you like to respond?
Yes. Well, I believe that there's still a problem with exchanging the knowledge and the experiences between actors, and it's also seen that bigger organizations have the bigger experiences and also located in bigger districts compared to smaller organizations with the smaller experiences, and it looks also from the result that they are still not ready, and some of them even don't know about the new rules or sustainable development in the country. So the scale of the company has also an influence, and then the network and communicating between the different actors and exchanging the knowledge between them, that's also a problematic issue that we're lacking today. So having efficient communication and at the same time, exchanging the experiences and learning from cases, from positive or from successful cases.
Okay, thanks, Aysar. I think it is a really, really good point that Pernilla raises in terms of where are we on the continuum in terms of addressing sustainability, and are we further on from where we were, 10, 5, 3 years ago? And again, it really, depends on the actors, as you mentioned, Aysar, in terms of what their knowledge is and the knowledge transfer within the sector, and the upskilling that is required. And that's a really, really key factor. Okay, I'm conscious of our time. We're at 11:50, so we're on schedule. Is just as before we move on, is there any other comments or questions? No. Well, Aysar, thank you very much for a very thought-provoking.
Thank you to you and to all the others. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So now moving to the second paper, we have perceived fairness of claims management processes in the UK construction industry, and Aisha Nosheen, Andrew O'Reilly, and Hafiz Mohammed Akhtar are the three authors of this paper. And I'll move to the presentation now. And again, if we could mute ourselves during it, and then if people have questions, please put them in the chat and I can give you access. So.
Hi, good morning to all. My name is Aisha Nosheen and my co-authors are Dr. Andrew Areawa and Hafiz Mohammed Akhtar. The title of my presentation is Perceived Fairness of Claims Management Processes in the UK Construction Industry. The contents of my presentation is, number 1, I will be discussing introduction, then I will be explaining literature review. I will also discuss about research method used for this paper. At the end, I will be presenting discussion and findings along with conclusion. Now, what is claim? Claim is an assertion right of money, property or remedy, while fairness talks about transparency and trust in all dealings. As far as the fairness of claims management processes in the UK construction industry is concerned, UK has suffered about €3.17 billion, equivalent to 1% of total procurement expenditure annually, due to unfair claim management processes, as reported by UK Anti-Corruption Report in 2014. The main contents of the literature review are: number 1, fairness of claim management processes; number 2, importance of fair claim process in the construction industry. If we discuss fairness of claim management processes, then minimum amount of single claim is £250. 32.5% projects faced cost overrun in medium-sized projects, while this figure is escalated by 88% in large-scale projects. To avoid unfair practices, a survey has been executed in Poland, in which 99% contractors, 55% subcontractors, 55% material suppliers, 45% investors, and 39% building designers have agreed on this point, that unfair claim management practices are needed to avoid at any cost. Now, as far as importance of fair claim process in the construction industry is concerned, a fair and transparent claim process is important because it helps to minimize costly contractual disputes. There is broad latitude for actual or perceived lack of fairness, while illegitimate claims are permitted and certified when legitimate claims are rejected. Secondly, contractors would make use of perception about fairness as one of the bases to reject claims certified decisions and would impact their propensity to engage in disputing behavior. Thirdly, the employer-appointed contract administrator is traditionally in a severe disputing interest situation in evaluating claims. It is appropriate to hypothesize the contractors would analyze not only based on the results but also on their assessment of the perceived fairness of claim management processes used to decide claims. Fair claim management practices will enhance successful project delivery, smooth cash flows, better quality, and reduce cost overruns. Indeed, fairness of perceptions have implications for the performance of the construction industry. If you see the status of construction claims in the UK, 10% claims has been increased in 2018 in the construction infrastructure sector. Whereas the same figure, if you see globally, The UK parties are at 21% in 2018, which is more than 1% than in 2017. This fact also has been highlighted by many scholars and reports. Like ARCOM has reported in 2019 that approximately 17.9 million US dollar is the average cost of claims disputes emanating from unfair claims in the construction handled in the UK. Also, then other author has discussed this problem that unfair claims occurrence cause 48% non-completion of projects at right time, 29% cash flow reduction, 17% low quality deliverance, and 66% of cost overruns. A survey has been conducted in 2000 by Thailand revealed that claim increases the construction contract value by 7%. Hence, conclusively, it can be said that there is no empirical study that predictively provides the perceived fairness of claims management processes in the UK construction industry. So it is very important to know and examine the perception about the claims management processes in the UK construction industry. The research method proposed for this paper is pragmatic and convergent triangulation mixed design. Data has been collected through 76 questionnaires and 16 interviews. For quantitative data questionnaire survey, Likert scale has been selected from 0 to 7, and quantitative data analysis has been analyzed through MS Excel. Similarly, the qualitative data of interviews has been analyzed through development of themes using content analysis. As far as the findings, quantitative findings are concerned, quantitatively it has been seen that unfairness of claims is a common phenomenon in the UK construction industry. The study investigated the perceived fairness of claim management processes from diverse construction industry stakeholders. The study scrutinized that 8 phases of claim management processes. The study findings reveal that claim substantiation shows the point score, a percentage is 41%, most problematic claim management processes, 17% claim documentation, 16% claim negotiation, 12% claim presentation, 5% claim approval. Claim identification and claim notification are 2% and 1% respectively, while 3% are others who said that claim management processes are most problematic. The 50% of participants who involved in the survey questionnaire has asked that contract management, claim management processes are fair, while 39% of participants stated that claim management processes as unfair. The 11% participants were unsure about the fairness perception in the claim management processes in the construction industry. As far as the findings of qualitative analysis is concerned, 9 interviewees, which approximately equates to 56%, indicated the processes are fair, while 7 interviews, that is approximately equivalent to 44%, indicated the unfairness of claim management processes in the UK construction industry. And they have indicated the reason behind this is that number 1 is lack of communication and substantiation of claims. So it is very important fact that fairness and the transparency is very common phenomenon that needs to be catered in the construction industry. So an effective claim management framework is therefore essential to ensure that any contractual claims arising are dealt with appropriately and fairly throughout all the claim management processes, so that it can be ensured and all the construction industry stakeholders.
Thank you, Aysar. Really a good presentation, and really covers the topic of fairness within claim management processes. And I suppose it begs the question for me in relation to and the fact that you did some qualitative work. I suppose I would like to explore the whole notion of the culture within the construction industry, and to what extent is that a factor in terms of the attitudes towards fairness?
Yes. Because one of the that I did not make part of this paper actually, but I have this is part of my research study. The question was the part of my research study, and I have most of the questionnaires I have respondents I have asked, is there any relationship between the contractual problem and the behavioral problem while executing claims and while executing the project? And I think 90%, according to my quantitatively and qualitatively outcomes, the respondents has asked, yes, behavioral problem is the most important, especially the behavioral problem at management level and linguistic problems.
Okay.
Yes, this exists. And that need to be catered through, because every individual person, every project manager or every site engineer, they have their own personality, they have their own beliefs, and they have their own knowledge. But this should not be meant that they, because of their own personal behavior or their own personal lacking or own personal boosting, it would suffer the problem. It would suffer, what can I say, suffer ultimately the project will suffer by this actually. So I visited, during my research, I have taken some interview of large construction company, claim manager, contract manager during COVID. And before COVID, what happened between the employer and the contractor, that they have amended the contract and they have excluded the clauses of force majeure, unfortunately. Okay. And obviously, when COVID happened, the site were closed 3 months. And it's a big construction company, second largest construction company in UK. And they were like, oh, but where we go? What we do? So they were extreme trouble, and they were at that point of time when I have interviewed them, I have collected the data of my questionnaire. They were making claims in front of me. And they showed me the papers and bundles of papers that see. And the behavior of the client is totally non-responsive, because obviously client will not pay for this, but still they are going to pay because they are facing the financial losses. Otherwise, the company will be liquidated for this particular project.
Right. Really interesting in terms of the effects of COVID and the environment from COVID. Yes. on that situation. Okay, we're open for questions if people would like to raise questions for Aysar. Does anybody have any questions in the chat? Didn't see any interacting in the chat yet.
I did not see actually.
No, I haven't seen any questions actually yet.
Yeah.
Pop up.
Even someone can suggest me, because I have completed my framework of my study.
Okay.
And I have covered all the phases of the construction project, from pre-construction to the during construction and the post-construction. What could be the preliminaries and what could be the proactive measurements that we can take to avoid or minimize the claim. Obviously, claims can't be avoided, but claims can be minimized to some extent.
Okay.
If you see the literature, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, claim exists. And after even 20 years ago, still we are so much, what can we say, so much well-sound, equipped with everything, but still we are lacking. Still we are we have not reached at a point where this thing is to be catered to some extent. It is evolutionary process. government has UK construction strategy has bound that the government wants to reduce the project cost by 50%. And how is that possible? Imagine if the planned cost is £100, for example, of any project. So it means that you will be so robust, and the participants, the stakeholders, with all knowledge, with all expertise, they will be so robust that and rigorous that they will execute according to they will reduce us money up to 50%. And this is just only possible that when you are be very well equipped with the claims management processes, because claim is the only thing that is increasing the project cost and project duration.
Okay. And the cost of materials wouldn't be a factor, would it?
That is also, even the cost of material ultimately becomes a claim. Okay.
Very, very good point. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose if we have we any questions from anybody else? I don't see anything coming through in the chat. Okay. Well, thank you for presenting your research, Aysar. It's a really interesting project, one that I suppose really impacts on the whole notion of where we're going in the construction sector in general, and hopefully that your what you come up with in terms of your claims management process and your framework, it'll actually impact well on the sector and make some change. So thank you for your contribution.
Thank you so much for all of you. God bless you all.
Thank you. So moving on, we have the final paper from Daniel Gilmour, Edward Simpson, Elizabeth Sargent, and Andrew Minto of Abertay University. And the paper's title is Stakeholders' Influence on Sustainable Design Decisions in Major Infrastructure Projects. So I'll load up the presentation, and we'll hear what Daniel and company have to say.
And welcome to my talk today. My name's Daniel Gilmour. I'm a professor at Abertay University. My interests are in sustainability assessment and enhancement. And today I want to talk to you about stakeholders and their influence on sustainability and design decisions. Okay, so we're going to look at major infrastructure project example and have a look at how they can influence what's happening. So the outline of the talk today, I'm going to just run through the aim of the project and then have a look at the nature of the design process itself and how we link that with sustainable decision making, and then have a look at the case study, which is the Ellyn A9 dualling project between Perth and Inverness. So the aim of the project is to determine the extent to which wider stakeholders' views on sustainability have influenced design decisions. So how can they be involved, and how can we get them more involved in the project? And really the background to this is to successfully deliver more sustainable infrastructure, we need to understand the process of decision making during the early stages of a project so that we can identify the influences that we can have on decisions that are made. There's a lack of literature around this, specifically about combining sustainability with stakeholder influence, and we wanted to bridge this gap through our project focusing on how we incorporate stakeholder views. So if we take you back just a little bit to just think about the design process itself. So what is the design process and how does it work? Well, you could conceptualize it as a series of mini decisions and communication. So if we're looking at the diagram here, we're saying from phase one, where we've got our general and abstract concept design, all the way through to a concrete design, we have a series of analysis, synthesis, thinking about appraising each of your ideas and communicating in some way, either a document or a direct communication with somebody. And that goes on through time, and you'll have increasing detail as you go through. So when we're doing this, we're constantly thinking about decision process, And we're thinking, what is the best decision to be made? And this brings in one of the key concepts when we're making our decisions, which is basically that we have to have a number of alternatives that we evaluate, and we have some criteria that we base these against. But for everything, we're not going to have a big, long, rational decision-making process, so we really think about the discovery and selection of satisfactory decisions. So we bring in this process satisficing, which is really us coming up with the most acceptable solution with a range of options. So I would suggest that design and consultancy work is all about decision making and finding these satisfactory, satisficing decisions where we're satisfying all our stakeholders. So if we're thinking about sustainable decision making, so what is that? Well, I would say that it's getting the right information to the right people at the right time. So a sustainable decision is one that people have been involved in and done a number of pieces of work around that, where we've had a look at where we can influence decisions. So decision making is another key aspect, and how do we bring sustainability in? I'm going to have a look at a couple of these things through a case study that one of my students was involved in, where they were working on this dueling project as part of Michelle's, and they were able to do their project there as well, which is why I'm presenting this today. So the project itself, for those who aren't aware, there's a big road that runs from Perth to Inverness in Scotland, and it's the A9, and it's got single carriageway and dual carriageway, and it's been a long process to try and deliver dual carriageway and upgrade across the whole of the length of the road. And the reason they're doing this is because you have a number of junctions where there are fatalities when there are crashes, because it's a high-speed road. So you have your higher than average proportion of severe injuries, which is why this needs to be enhanced. So as you can imagine, a project like this will involve a lot of stakeholders. You have the landowners, you have the design partners, you have Transport Scotland, and through this you have to understand the needs and the approaches that people have. So what did we do in the project? Well, we did two activities in the methods. We looked at semi-structured interviews with the participants of the project, and we had face-to-face interviews with project manager, commission manager, and the client representative of the statutory stakeholders group, because there's a number of statutory stakeholders. And through this, we were trying to understand the way stakeholders were engaged in the project. So, for example, for the project manager, they helped inform the process of incorporating stakeholders. Commission manager helped bring a number of sustainability examples and design examples. And the client representative gave a lot of information around the consultation of the stakeholder group and the wider stakeholders. Document analysis was also involved, so it was a dual sort of two-pronged approach where we looked at what kind of information was held within these documents to document these mini decisions that I was talking about earlier. To say, okay, this is being communicated, so who's been involved in the decision maker and how's it been engaged? So again, you can see here the types of documents that were analysed, and they were then drawn into some themes that we looked at as part of the project, where we're looking at the way the stakeholders were engaged. So interestingly, stakeholders were seen by the design team as often being informed or commenting on a decision, but rarely did they have direct influence on the choice to be made. This generally happened if they did have choice when there were specific roles that some of these stakeholders played, and there was a very specific question from the design team. They were then asked to input onto that. But in general, as you can see by the diagram here, the frequency of words used to talk about stakeholder conversations were very much about informed, commented on something that had been proposed already. So you can see that, as a lot of us understand the stakeholder engagement, it's very complicated and you're not just proposing things. So what were the main findings? Well, suggested to the extent to which stakeholder influence design varies between stakeholders. And that's not a surprise that some stakeholders have more influence than others. But they also brought out a number of critical success factors in stakeholder management. And these were thinking about mapping stakeholders, identifying who they are, defining the stakeholder engagement strategy, refreshing that strategy, and keeping stakeholders up to date with decisions that are made so they feel included in this process. One of the outputs of the work was a sustainability model where we tried to take these critical success factors and link them with the process of the decision and the project development, and also sustainability. So you can see here we have sustainability goals brought in, framework of design goals, making sure you create a list of stakeholders, and through the project, you're making sure they're engaged with regular updates to project end. And this key part at the end, making sure that we still have a good relationship with our stakeholders at the end of the project for the next part. So as I say, this model was developed as a result of the interviews and the document analysis and the success factors from the literature. So to conclude, well, the project found that interviews and document analysis was a good way to identify the engagement of stakeholders, and that it was possible for all parties to co-benefit in engaging in the process. To maximise the opportunity to take on board views, opinions and aspirations for each stakeholder, we need to meet regularly with all stakeholders, and as the project developed, the design decisions need to be made,
Daniel,
and they were more specific as they came forward. And our work found in the literature that stakeholders seem to be on the receiving end of the strategy decisions rather than being instrumental in a number of these stakeholders. Okay, well, I look forward to speaking to you at the live part of the conference, but thank you very much for my talk.
Infrastructural projects, and road networks and the like. And I'm just wondering, is there scope for your sustainability model in terms of medium-sized projects or even small-sized projects, and how might that look? Is there any aspects of it that might be actually different?
Hi Lloyd, I maybe missed the first little bit of that, but I picked up the end, so I'll just carry on from there. I was still watching the video while you were chatting away, so there seemed to be a lag on my end, so then that's just my Wi-Fi.
No problem.
So yeah, I think that the project itself was obviously a big, well-funded project with large consultants who already had good systems in place. But I think the actual output of the work, where you had your model with the stages and linking that to the sustainability factors within that project could be used on smaller projects. I don't think it's limited to large-scale projects. So yeah, I think it probably could be used in other cases, but we didn't look at that. We were really looking at just that one case in this work, but that would certainly be a way to extend the project work.
Super. Thanks, Daniel. And Mahid has a question. Mahid, I've unmuted you. Would you like to raise your question? Okay. I'm going to unmute. Richmond has a question also. Maybe Richmond, if you...
Yes, thank you very much. I have a question regarding the stakeholder empowerment, because as much as it's important to bring in different stakeholders, not all of them may have the capability to be able to even engage in a dialogue at a design level. So to what extent does your model incorporate or account for the potential differences in the ability of different stakeholders to be able to engage at a design decision-making level? So that's the first part of the question. The second leg is also to ask you to comment on how your framework also account for different power, legitimacy, and relevance dynamics among different stakeholders. Because it's part of the stakeholder mapping. Not all of them will have the different level of influence or control or even relevance. So to what extent do you where do you think within this sustainability framework you are proposing do this issue fit? Perhaps those two will suffice for now.
Yeah. Well, I think if I picked up correctly, I think what we try to achieve in sustainable decision making is to try and capture everybody's views within the decision process. But as you say, some people's views may be more informed than others, but I think we have to take everybody's views on their own legitimacy. But I think when it comes to the design stage, there are going to be stakeholders that are more relevant to engage with, and certainly that's what we found, that there were stakeholders who had the information we either were wanting or feedback from things. But I think is what the framework was trying to achieve was to make sure that all stakeholders were managed throughout the process. So where stakeholders had varying degrees of information or knowledge, they were still adequately brought in at the right stages, whether that was part of a group that fed into early design decisions or whether it was on a direct basis. So I think for me, it was about trying to get that management through the process to make sure you're not dropping anybody off, so you're not just dealing with easy things, you're trying to pick up the maybe the more difficult interactions that you also have to do. But yeah, as the design process went through, the designers were doing their typical, they were doing their designs and then checking if they needed something checked. If not, they were just showing their participants what their design was at the end in these consultations. So I don't know if that's picked up what you were asking, but certainly there are legitimacy issues. There's certainly different power and different information that people can provide. And I think you do have to recognize that through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just one more, Chris, if you, is there a way your model can also help us understand the extent to which these stakeholder views are reflected in the final design decisions that are made? Because one of the arguments that are made in stakeholder engagement, to be able to demonstrate that this is really what the stakeholders actually contributed, not just getting their perspective, but it's been reflected in the outcome of the process.
Yeah, I think it would be really useful to be able to document where a stakeholder has influenced the decision. I think certainly to help demonstrate that you've brought that in and to be clear where they've shown. I guess what you would be doing was doing some kind of mapping process where you asked the decision maker where they got their information from and really try and map this whole process. That would obviously be quite an extensive piece of work. But if certainly in the documentation, we found that you could track where the documents had either gone out to people and what their comments were. So you could certainly look at the documentation but in this design decision making, it would be quite a lot of work, I think, to try and track each sub-decision and where the influences come from. But it's possible. I think it would be possible, and it would be what would be the benefit of the resource to do that, I think would be the argument. But certainly from a purpose of trying to illustrate where people have influenced, document analysis is certainly something that's helpful for doing that, and you could ask your design team to tag where they've certainly engaged with certain groups and how they've used that information.
Thank you.
Okay, are you okay with that, Richmond?
Yes.
Okay, can I just move? Mahid has put 2 questions in the chat, so I'll actually read them out for him. How can the satisfaction of stakeholders be measured at the operation phase?
Well, I think not everybody's going to be satisfied with whatever design decision is made. I think what people can feel engaged in the decision-making process, and if they are engaged in it, they can at least feel that they were listened to, even if they weren't then ultimately able to influence what happened. I think certainly research has shown that people can accept a decision if they've been involved in the process of getting to it. So yeah, sacrificing and coming to a rational decision where you're saying, okay, well, I've evaluated all the parts I can evaluate, and here is my decision that is hopefully satisfying most elements. There will be people with opposing views that don't have, if you think about the road routing, for example, there are going to be people who wished it would be somewhere else, but how do you make sure that they can understand why it's there rather than somewhere else? I think it's part of the challenge.
Okay, thanks, Daniel, for that. And Mahid has a follow-on question then. Do you think that the stakeholders can be succumbed to the power and authority of the designers?
I don't know. I guess a well-presented design that shows that they've thought about what their inputs are could sway people. I think, again, if I go back to if they feel they've been listened to and engaged in the process, even if ultimately it doesn't get brought forward, yeah, but the designers do have a lot of power in each of their sub-stages to make sure they have included or not included some of these suggestions. So yeah, I think there's that power that the designers do have, and that's why the key role for them is to make sure sustainability is part of their thinking.
Okay, super. Hopefully, Mahid, that answers your question. If there's no more questions in the chat, I'm conscious that we're 3 minutes from time. Are people okay for us to actually bring things to a close? Yes, thank you is the response from Mahid. Are we okay to bring this session to a close? And in doing so, I'd just like to thank our 3 presenters, Aysar, Aisha and Daniel, for presenting their research in the area of sustainability and the built environment. And thank you for your contribution, and hopefully you had an engaging session. And I just draw your attention to now we're closing, and with the ARCOM AGM will be at 12:45. So if people would like to come along to that would be really good to have you along to that. And I see some of the comments there in the chat are thank you for excellent presentation. So thank you everyone, and we'll hopefully see some of you in the ARCOM AGM at 12:45.